continue our celebration of Women's History Month, we're shining a light on 3 incredible women from different backgrounds and cultures who fought for equality, justice, and change. So as always, I will link the sources of my information in the show notes as well for these women. The first woman who I'd like to celebrate today is Jovita Idar, who was alive from 1885 to 1946. And she was a Mexican-American journalist and activist. She was a journalist, a teacher who fought for Mexican-American civil rights, education, and women's suffrage in the early 20th century in Texas. So she used her platform to challenge racism, advocate for bilingual education, and push for equal rights. Idar came from a family of journalists. Her father, Nicasio Idar, founded La Crónica, a Spanish-language newspaper in Laredo, Texas. So in 1914, she worked for El Progreso, another newspaper that criticized the U.S. government's treatment of Mexican Americans. The Texas Rangers actually came to shut down the paper because of its critical stance, but Jovita stood at the door and physically blocked them from entering. She was also a pioneer in the Mexican feminist movement. She was part of the League of Mexican Women, one of the first known feminist organizations in Texas. She pushed for women's suffrage, bilingual education, as I mentioned, and better schools for Mexican American children who were often segregated and given fewer resources. She provided medical aid during the Mexican Revolution, where she traveled across the border to work as a nurse for soldiers and civilians wounded in battle. She even helped to organize relief efforts and was dedicated to serving her community in times of crisis. So why does she matter today? Well, Jovita's fearless journalism and activism reminds us of the power of the press and the importance of standing up for marginalized communities. Her fight for equal education, women's rights, and freedom of speech still resonates in modern discussions about immigration, racial justice, and bilingual education in America. The second woman I'd like to highlight is Rosalind Franklin, who was alive from 1920 to 1958. She was a British chemist and X-ray crystallographer. Rosalind was a brilliant scientist whose work was instrumental in discovering the double helix structure of DNA. Though James Watson, Francis Crick, and Maurice Wilkins are often credited with this breakthrough, Franklin's X-ray diffraction images actually provided the key evidence. Yet she was largely unrecognized in her time. She was a pioneering female scientist in a male-dominated field. So Franklin studied chemistry at the University of Cambridge, where women were still often discouraged from pursuing science. She earned her PhD in physical chemistry in 1945, and later worked at King's College London, where she led research on X-ray diffraction, a technique that helps visualize molecular structures. Franklin's famous Photo 51 was a groundbreaking X-ray image that revealed DNA's helical shape. Her precise research showed that DNA molecules were arranged in 2 spiraled strands, which helped James Watson and Francis Crick build their famous double helix model. Without Franklin's permission, Maurice Wilkins, her colleague at King's College, shared her X-ray findings with Watson and Crick, who then published their DNA model in 1953. Franklin's contributions were not fully acknowledged in their Nobel Prize-winning work in 1962, as the award was given 4 years after her death from ovarian cancer. But today, Franklin is finally credited as a key figure in DNA's discovery. Franklin's determination and brilliance helped lay the foundation for modern genetics and molecular biology. Her story is a powerful example of how women's contributions to science have often been overlooked, but deserve to be remembered and celebrated. And the third woman that I'd like to celebrate today is Mary Tape, who was alive from 1857 to 1934. She was a Chinese-American civil rights activist. She was an immigrant whose legal battle in Tape versus Hurley in 1885 challenged racial segregation in California's public schools. She fought for the right of her daughter, Mamie Tape, to attend a whites-only school, paving the way for future desegregation efforts. She was born in China, and then she immigrated to the U.S. in the 1860s, where she was orphaned and then raised by a white foster family in San Francisco. She married Joseph Tape, a fellow Chinese immigrant, and they became one of the first affluent Chinese-American families in San Francisco. In 1884, the San Francisco Board of Education refused to admit her daughter Mamie into a public school because she was Chinese. Mary and Joseph sued the school district in Tape v. Hurley, 1885, arguing that Chinese children deserved equal educational rights under California law. The California Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Tapes, stating that all children, regardless of race, had the right to a public education. However, in response, San Francisco quickly opened a separate Chinese school, forcing Mary's daughter to attend segregated education. So while her case didn't fully end segregation, it set a legal precedent for challenging discriminatory laws. Decades later, as you may well know, her fight influenced cases like Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which ruled racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. Mary Tape was one of the first Asian American women to take legal action for civil rights in the U.S. Her courage and persistence laid the foundation for future fights against racial discrimination, particularly in education. Women's History Month is a time to recognize and honor the voices that history often overlooks. Women like Rosalind Franklin, Mary Tape, and Jovita Idar didn't just contribute to their fields, they paved the way for future generations. Their courage and determination reminds us that change happens when people are bold enough to stand up for what's right.